Happy Monday. Welcome to another episode of Brain Scratch Case Cracked. I'm John Lorden. Thank you so much for spending some time with me here today. Christy Arnhart has been working really hard trying to dig into cases that are solved in all kinds of different ways, and today's is no exception. This is a case that I like to call Kevin's Bird. Kevin Butler led a quiet, single life in Pleasant Grove, Texas, where the 48-year-old owned a prosperous pool installation business, but his real passion was animals. He loved animals and often adopted strays and pets that friends could no longer care for. Kevin's constant companion, his pride and joy, was his pet cockatoo called Bird. Now, the name Bird wasn't a lazy attempt. He was actually named after NBA legend Larry Bird. Bird had come to Kevin through an old roommate and was intelligent, energetic, and very affectionate. White cockatoos are typically 18 inches long, and the males can weigh up to 28 ounces. These large avians are known to bond with their owners like mates and will protect them at all costs. That bond was obvious to anyone who knew Kevin and Bird. Family and coworkers jokingly said, "You just didn't mess with Kevin while the bird was around." On Christmas Eve 2001, Butler's best friend, Michael DiNardo, had begun to worry. The two were supposed to have dinner that night, but Kevin didn't show up. Concerned, Michael drove to his friend's home to check in on him. When he arrived, he found the front door open, all of the lights were on, but Kevin's truck was nowhere to be seen. Knowing this was out of character, he entered the home to check things out. Lying on the living room floor was Kevin. He had been tied up and brutally murdered. When officers arrived, DiNardo described his friend as being, quote, tied up like a slaughtered pig. Kevin's hands were bound behind his back, and there were many wounds all over his body. It appeared that the house had been ransacked as well, with items thrown about everywhere. Through the course of their search, officers were able to determine that Kevin's truck and a video cassette recorder were stolen, along with about $1,200 in cash. They also found 4 knives that they believed had been used in the murder. One was found under Kevin's body. Another lay in the living room near his body. One was in the kitchen, and the last one was found outside. DNA evidence was taken from various bloodstains scattered throughout the room and from a light switch. Sadly, mixed in with all the debris was feathers. In another room, lying dead on the floor, was Bird. The cockatoo was covered in blood and now missing a leg. Investigators gathered the evidence they had acquired and then transported both Kevin and Bird to the Dallas County Medical Examiner's office for further testing. An autopsy showed that Kevin died of both blunt force and sharp force injuries. While bound, he was stabbed in the chest and abdomen, and his throat was cut. The examiner could tell that he had suffered a brutal beating by the number of kick marks found on his body. When an autopsy of Bird was conducted, it showed that he had apparently fought valiantly for his and Kevin's lives. The cockatoo not only had a leg cut off, but had been stabbed in the back. It was the stab wound that was fatal, but before he died, he was able to land at least one blow on the attacker. The medical examiners found genetic material on his claw and beak. As investigators waited for the DNA evidence they had acquired to come back, officers questioned friends, family, and co-workers. Kevin was well liked in the community and had many friends, but everyone kept mentioning one man, Johnny Cerna. Cerna had worked at Kevin's pool installation business until recently. The two men had not gotten along well while on the job, and finally had a big falling out, which ended in Cerna leaving. At the time, Johnny Cerna lived in the block of houses that sat behind Kevin's with his half-brother Daniel Torres. When questioned, Cerna admitted that the two men had a falling out over accusations of theft. Kevin gave Cerna a $30 check to pay for a pool liner, which he then accused the man of altering to read $300. The check was cashed, but Cerna claimed to have no knowledge of the change and refused to give any of the money back. Both Cerna and Torres told investigators that they had not gotten along with Butler, but denied any involvement in his murder. Just 3 days later, Kevin's truck was found abandoned. Luckily, officers were able to take DNA samples from it as well. As they waited on those results, investigators continued to question their two best suspects, Serna and Torres. Both men adamantly denied their involvement until July of 2002, when those test samples finally came back. Evidence showed that Serna's DNA was all over Kevin's truck, but the knives, blood samples, and evidence from Bird came back pointing to Torres. When confronted with this evidence, the two men finally started to open up. 2 weeks before the murder, Serna and Kevin Butler had their falling out. On the 24th, both Serna and Torres were at their mother's house, a short distance from their home, drinking rum and beer heavily on her front porch. Torres drunkenly asked his half-brother if he was still bothered by Butler's accusations. Serna admitted that he was, and from there, the two got each other so worked up, they decided to go to Butler's house and kick his butt. As the two walked up, Kevin opened his front door and sarcastically asked the two men if they were there to rob him. In response, Johnny Serna hit Kevin in the face and forced him back into the house. The ensuing fight took them from one room to the next until Kevin made it out to the front porch, but before he could escape or call for help, he was pulled back into the house where his arms and legs were bound with an electrical cord. Then the two men took turns beating and kicking him while searching the house for valuables. During the struggle, Bird flew at the pair, pecking them on the head and drawing blood. Torres stabbed the Bird in the back with a fork, wiped the blood from his head, and then touched that light switch, leaving crucial DNA evidence at the scene. Although the two argued about who committed the actual murder, investigators believed that Torres cut Butler's throat. With the evidence prosecutors took to court, it wasn't very hard to get a conviction. At trial, both suspects left their previous confessions behind and blamed the other for the murder. Juries chose to believe the evidence presented, and both were convicted of murder and sentenced to life in prison. Prosecuting attorney George West said Bird's bravery had been key to the trial. This Bird spoke, and he spoke to us, he said. In 2004, both men appealed their convictions on technicalities raised from the previous court proceedings, only to have the original conviction upheld. With his love of animals, Kevin's family said it was fitting that Bird would help police solve the crime. Quote, "All of his animals were strays," Kathy Butler, Kevin's sister, told reporters. "He treated his pets with love, and in doing so, his pets loved him back, and that was certainly the case here." Case cracked. We'd like to give a big thank you to newspapers.com, who provided all the original newspaper articles to do the research on this. BBC News, The Washington Post, Wikipedia, and CBS News. A record of both Serna and Torres' court cases were provided by casetext.com and lawjustia.com, both of which were invaluable to today's show, but not as invaluable as Christy Arnhart, who researched and wrote up today's episode. When I was talking to Christy about this episode, we were wondering about the leg, and it didn't occur to me until I was rereading it now with you that perhaps he knew that his blood got on one of Bird's talons, and maybe he was trying to take that as evidence. We're still not sure why one of Bird's legs were missing, but that's the only thing that might kind of make some sense to me. If you have other ideas about that, please drop those in the comments below. Obviously, pets can be invaluable companions, although maybe not all of them are protective as Bird was. But just like in the case of Detective Tinker the cat that we talked about a few weeks ago, our pets are close to us, and we can leave forensic traces on each other that can sometimes help law enforcement solve crimes, just like in this case. Now, personally, I have several pets, but on top of that, my wife and I also volunteer at a no-kill shelter. Just wanted to remind you all that with everything that's going on right now, these shelters need to be remembered. Most of them are nonprofit organizations that run on extremely tight budgets. So in Bird's honor, we made a donation to rescuethebirds.org. They operate out of Northbrook, Illinois, and have several cockatoos for adoption. I'll have a link in the description box below if you want to check them out. And if you want a pet that's going to love and, in some cases, maybe even protect you, please look into local adoptions or fostering, not just of birds. There are many animals out there looking for homes. Now is a great time to bring a new member into your family that will bring you comfort and entertainment for years to come. Quick reminder, don't forget you can hang out with me live this Saturday night on True Crime Game Time at 8 p.m. Central. We'll have more games, more guests, and more time to chat and connect with each other, which is really the focus and why I want to keep that show going for as long as I can. If you guys keep showing up, we're going to keep doing them. I really hope to see you there. A big thank you to my supporters for helping me support great organizations of all kinds, just like we did here today on the channel. Thanks to recent PayPal supporters Emma Rostron, Jennifer Wilson, Jean Carew, Michael Park, and Kelly from I Am Me. If you'd like to support the channel, please visit www.lordandarts.com. You can sign up for Patreon, sign up for PayPal, or check out some of the new merch, including stuff with the new Case Cracked logo. All of it helps keep me here doing what I love doing, spending time with you. See you on Wednesday with a brand new episode of Searchlight right here on the Lord and Arts channel.